I want to take you somewhere slightly different. I want to take you to Thailand 26 years ago, to a moment that changed my life. It was right there up by that boulder. I was in the water. It was warm. And the waves suddenly started getting bigger, and I looked out to the shore, and people were calling me to come back in. So I started swimming in, and as I did that, the sea started pulling me out. The harder I swam, the harder I got pulled back out to sea. And in that moment is when 90% of beach deaths occur. People try to fight the tide, and they drown. Now imagine yourself there just for a moment. Lungs filled with what feels like battery acid, knowing you might have a minute or two left to live. You're almost out of energy. And in that moment, I had to make a choice. Do I do what's always worked, swimming back into shore? Or do I try and figure out what's going on and see if something else is possible? I stopped. I took a breath. Thought back to what I might know. And I remembered my 5th grade swim teacher, and she said that there were these things called rip currents, rip tides. In a normal tide, the water goes out and it comes back in. But in a rip tide, it goes around the edge of the beach and goes back toward the center. I looked around and nothing in front of me, just water. But on the left, the right, there was some flotsam and some jetsam. I realized that was probably the situation I was in. So I took the little bit of energy I had left and I paddled off about 30 feet. Instead of the tide pulling me out, it pulled me into shore when I did not have the energy to deal with it myself. I crawled up the beach feeling like I just had a heart attack. I went to the igloo cooler. I got myself a nice cold beer. I watched the sunset. That's when I asked a question. The question that I've been thinking about for the last 25 years. What the hell just happened? How did a couple of small decisions in working with nature shift my life from 60 seconds to hopefully another 60 years? That's what I help organizations do. Work with the forces of nature to take advantage of things that we could not on our own. We've come to call these things rogue waves, moments in time and space where multiple undercurrents collide. And I think they happen in your business. I think they happen in your family. Might be one happening in your life right now. So how do we get ahead of these? How do we get ahead of what happens next? I think it comes down to 3 steps, 3 questions. Why is the world changing? What we can do about it? And how do we take advantage? How do we start taking action today for the things that will happen next? Let's start with why. What does the world look like over the next 5 years? What do we know about the legal profession over the next 5 years? What do we know about our customers? How it will impact the verticals that we're in and our customers within those verticals. There's a lot that's going to change in terms of technology. We heard about AI. If there's another financial issue, which I think is likely given kind of the way these cycles work, what does that mean for our customers? What does that mean for how we go to market? And how will the regulatory environment change? I think pretty substantially. We're going to have a populist president now. We're going to have a populist Congress now. I don't know if it's going to be a red or blue Congress or president next, but it is going to be a populist regime moving forward. When I talk to lawyers, when we do surveys, what we hear are that there are 4 things that we're really concerned about, right? New technology, reducing costs. How are we going to do that? How are we going to keep up with the Joneses? Relationship management. How do we hold on to our customers? And ALSP. What are the new alternatives to what we do? I think these are things that are hard for us to control. We can get better at them, but I don't think they're the real issue over the next 5 years. I think the real issue is your business model. You're growing. It was really cool. You've got operations in the East. You've got operations in Central. You're going to probably, if I had to guess, and no one's told me a strategy, right? You're going to look at how do we get into the West Coast? How do we get into Europe next? How do we compete? How do we grow? How do we outscale? I think that's incredibly important. And that trend toward merging is not going to decrease. We saw 35 mergers in the first half of this year. We're also seeing the growth of artificial intelligence, which we just heard about. And I think there's a bit of a disconnect with where the bar is at and the realities of the situation. This is what the bar says. AI will never be better effectively than lawyers at lawyering. I know I'm in a litigation issue right now. That my AI is not better than my lawyer today, but it has changed the entire conversation. And the rate at which AI is accelerating may shift the way that we work with our customers, the way our customers work with us. So let's first of all talk about what is AI. Let's get on the same page about definitions. We have been working with artificial intelligence for about 70 years now, since one of my mentors, my professor Marvin Minsky, and a guy named John McCarthy coined the term at the start of this summer workshop. And we've been working on two categories of technology that we call artificial intelligence. We have symbolic AI, which is kind of left brain stuff. If you were around in the 90s, you might remember these things called expert systems, where you would model a complex thing and it would go from A to B to C to D reliably. It was really great, except it was really hard to do. And so that kind of fell out of favor. You might see things like TurboTax. That's based on these types of models. The other thing that's gotten really exciting over recent years is this idea of neural AI. Very exciting stuff. Jeff Hinton got a Nobel Prize, I think, last year for his work on deep learning and neural networks. And this is probabilistic AI. The way I like to think about this is symbolic AI is the left brain artificial intelligence. And neural AI is that crazy artist that didn't have his Adderall today. It's just kind of doing this all the time. It's the right brain AI. The project over the next 5 years is going to bring these together into a whole brain AI, a whole brain intelligence that's balanced, that thinks through problems in meaningful ways. We're well along that journey. There are a number of big steps that need to happen. Where we're at right now in public relations, in the media, is an obsession with something that got released to the public in a big way with ChatGPT in 2022, 2023, called transformer models. We got really excited about these things. No, not like that. Got really excited about these things. They're large language models. They're really cool. There's a lot of potential there, but without that left brain component, they're kind of crazy a little bit, and you can't trust them very much. So we're working on that. This integration is something that you likely have not done a lot with yet. This whole brain type of thinking. It's not something you've done a lot with yet. Over the last couple of weeks, I think Copilot started to do some of this. But up until now, Copilot hasn't been a particularly good tool if you're working with it. It's been kind of the 21st century version of Clippy. In fact, until August of this year, only 1% of AI users had used what we call reasoning models, which are these what we call neurosymbolic systems that link the left brain and the right brain. And what we've seen, and this is why this is really important to Grok, is that these reasoning models have improved in accuracy over 7 times in the last 12 months. And there is every reason to think that line will maybe not stay at the same arc, but continue in a meaningful way. So multiply this out 5 years and think about what that might look like. We're going to dramatically change the nature of productivity in our economies. We're going to change the nature of productivity in what we do. When we think about economic growth based on innovation, right? It's based on 3 things. The first is knowledge. How do we know new things? When we know new things become possible. Over the last year and a half or so, what we've seen is about 800 years of research into materials science through AI tools. We don't know what to do with this. We don't know how to absorb this. And so we're having to figure out new ways to think through what these tools can do, the range of options they give to us. At Berkeley Livermore Labs, is that going? Yeah. At Berkeley Livermore Labs, they're building robots to go and test all of these new materials that have been developed by AI in an automated way, once again, using artificial intelligence. When you accelerate the rate at which new materials are available, you accelerate the rate at which new products become available. Think about the last couple of times we did this. We had a Bronze Age, we had an Iron Age, we had the Steel Age, the Industrial Age, the Silicon Age upon which we all live. We're in a world of accelerating change, accelerating innovation, because knowledge is accelerating. That's going to change the way we work. One of the things that's getting very exciting right now is this idea of agentic AI, this idea that the AI can work together in some cases, but do multiple steps in a workflow. This is a researcher at the Toyota Research Institute. And the dad is a researcher at the Toyota Research Institute. And he is drawing pictures of cars. Really exciting. He's not an engineer. He's just an artist drawing pictures of cars. And when you have a car designer, they can come up with 3 or 5 or 6 or maybe 8 ideas a day doing this. But with AI and generative tools, he's coming up with 187 ideas a day. And not only that, he's linking those drawings to initial engineering assessments around airflow analysis and linking that back to his designs. So here's something like what that looks like. Accelerated like 30 times, right? But what you can see is that all of a sudden, the first round of design review, or maybe in your case, the first round of review with an associate or with paralegals, all of a sudden starts to go away. Imagine that 3 or 5 years from now, when in his case, all of a sudden it's doing initial engineering assessments, regulatory assessments. It has synthetic customers that it's testing the ideas against. How much more innovation can he do? And how does that disrupt the entire workflow of the firm? It's pretty radical. These types of tools are still a bit expensive today. When I work with advanced research labs, you might have the $30 a month version. I've got the $200 a month version of ChatGPT. Some of these people are working with the $100,000 a month version, the $1 million a month version of these tools. And what I can tell you from what I've seen that's under NDA is it is not your father's Oldsmobile. This is an entirely different class of technology. And it's cost reducing at a massive rate. The most advanced models, the value of them is decreasing at about 9 times a year. Multiply that 2 years. And what you're seeing is that the best stuff is 99% cheaper. 99% in 2 years. What does that mean in 5? It means that the best tools today might cost 100,000th of what they do today. What I'm saying is that the science fiction future is available faster than your firm can probably absorb it. The other thing that I can tell you is that when you accelerate this change, and when you look at how quickly this is growing, conservatively, and I've talked with hundreds of CIOs and CTOs this year, conservatively, the quality of output of these tools can grow by 32 times in the next 5 years. When I say this sounds insane to me, but when I talk to leaders in the field and when I talk to buyers in the field, literally no one blinks. What does that mean? Like when you think about that in human performance terms. Usain Bolt ran 44 kilometers an hour for about 3 seconds, fastest man on the planet. He can run faster than a wombat for 3 seconds. We look at the scale of what we are capable of doing in terms of what we do, not in terms of what is possible. Usain Bolt is only faster than a wombat. You make him 32 times faster, and you make him that capability digital. All of a sudden, what you're doing is you're moving him at hypersonic speeds in a rocket around the Earth 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, non-stop. That's the scale of change. When I was last here, the question was, okay, that sounds really expensive. I have a lot of technology debt. I don't know how to get my data in place. I'm guessing most people here, most companies here are still struggling with that issue. The interesting thing in about 2027 is that this conversational coding, this vibe coding gets good enough at understanding context. They can start to pull and structure your data in meaningful ways. And this is stuff that companies like OpenText are already investing in. So this is a very likely future where a lot of that technology debt starts to go away. So older companies start to be competitive with newer companies in the IT stack. Radically different world. There's a lot we can do here. A lot of decisions we can make. We can save a lot of money. That's awesome. So will everybody else. You can also do new things. What does this make possible for you? What is the potential? How are we going to take the 7-8% unemployment rate in Chile and give them new things to do? There's so much that suddenly becomes possible. And a lot of it is because the way that we do business paradoxically doesn't work. It's going to be dramatically disrupted. We've been doing the same thing since the 1850s in terms of how we build organizations, where there's the smart person at the top, there's a board, C-suite, and then staff going down, right? That's how we did it. And all organizations are made up of three things. Their architecture, command, control, communication. Their routines, how they get things done. And their culture, how they align around what happens next. The way we do things today was based on a number of assumptions that I believe are no longer true. In the New York and Erie Railroad, which was the first example of an organizational chart in the world, they had to make a number of assumptions. One, they had undereducated people who couldn't read. They were maybe getting information by telegraph, one direction, if it came. They had a time schedule on which things had to happen, and they had a pocket watch. It was off by a minute or maybe two, there would be a train accident. So they had to put incredible controls in place. It had to be incredibly tops down. The transaction cost, is what economists call it, was incredibly high, so you had strong controls. But agents change everything. Agents lead to agency. They allow every person in your firm to make dramatically better decisions based on the context in your firm, based on data about what's going on outside. And they allow them to start to process, to simulate things in a different way, looking at certainly supply chain issues or negotiation issues and using game theory that right now, airlines and governments use, but for day-to-day tasks. Maybe it's how to negotiate a budget, but it's also going to be things like where to go for lunch. That's what happens when the costs drop 100,000 times. Every single person in your organization, not in like science fiction future, but in 5 years, will have an AI they work with. That AI might be managing 1,000 bots, 1,000 processes, 1,000 agents, 1,000 interactions. Every single person in your firm may be dealing with the complexity of your most senior leaders today. Leads to some interesting questions about the use of a C-suite. But that's another talk. We need to start thinking about how to reorganize our organizations away from our physical capital and toward our human capital. How do we move from building a railroad-based OS, a mechanical age OS, to something much more organic, much more fluid? And the best analogy, the best metaphor I've come up with is the octopus. This is an amazing animal. I can't figure out. Is Barbara out there? All right, Barbara might have 2 brains. I'm pretty sure she does. But the rest of us, right, we have 1. An octopus is the most amazing animal because it doesn't have 1 brain, it has 9. And the big brain is actually the smallest one. Most of the processing, most of the decision making happens in a neural network, clusters of 8 small brains around each arm, each tentacle of the octopus. And so the decisions are made not going top down, but oftentimes bottom up. And that's why when you look at an octopus, the initial motion often seems random, and then it looks more and more coordinated, and then it all moves in this incredibly efficient way that seems just counterintuitive. And that's because it's thinking, it's operating, it's working in a completely different way than us. It's working in the way that an AI-driven and AI-native organization is able to. That's a thing we can all choose to do, or it's a thing that we can all choose to compete with. So how does this AI automation roll out? What does it look like? How does this kind of occur? Let's kind of take a quick look at tasks. In the US, and I'm sure that the numbers are similar here, there are a number of areas that are really hard to increase the efficiency of. Education's historically been one. Business and legal professions have been one. Management has been really hard to automate. Professional services in the US, we see about a 1.9% increase in efficiency a year. What McKinsey is saying, and this aligns with our research and it aligns with work from the International Monetary Fund, is by 2030, just AI can increase the efficiency of those businesses by 14%. It doubles, it triples the efficiency gains in professional services. Are we prepared for that? Do we even know what an organization that wins in that world looks like? It's a radically different place. Some of you are going to need a drink after this. The good news is this guy, his labor efficiency, his labor productivity has actually gone down over the last 40 years. It turns out he has not figured out how to pour 3 pisco sours with 2 hands. Right? So we're going to move into this world where some people are going to really survive well and not have to change a lot. Others, man, they're going to have to move from being non-innovative economies in industries to incredibly innovative really fast. It's that culture change. How do we align out about how to do things radically different? In manufacturing, I had the joy of working with a 58,000 person electronics manufacturing company. And they gave me data about the time that every person in their organization spends on different tasks. And when we looked at the technology between 2018 and transformer models were a part of that, and today, just using the technology we had, the efficiency gains we could find in a manufacturing organization, and they do about 3% efficiency gains a year typically. What we saw across the entire company was something a lot more like this. The tasks that people are burning themselves out doing today go away. That doesn't mean all these jobs are going to go away, because everyone's going to do it at the same time. You have to find new ways to compete. You have to find new things to do. Unless you do that, you die. The rate of innovation has to increase. And there's a difference, I think, between time and value. So if you think back to the 1800s, the age of the railway, in many ways it was replacing the stagecoach. And the stagecoach driver, he would turn the horse like 12 hours a day. Today, we're concerned about self-driving trucks, right? Those coming into the United States in the next couple of years. There's a couple of things we need to think about. One is that there's a 1.2 million person shortage of truck drivers in the United States by 2030. And so that's going to be the first place that they backfill. And I'm guessing something may be true here given your demographics. But the other thing is that the job of the truck driver was never to drive the truck. Turning the steering wheel might be what they do 12 hours a day, but that is not the value that they create. The value they create is making sure that the product gets from point A to point B when something goes wrong. The value chains move smoothly. And that problem is not going to go away. And so we need to look at where do we take this time savings and create more value, give people other jobs to do, other ways to create opportunity for us and for themselves. So we've talked a lot about a lot of things in this half hour. We've talked a lot about a lot of things today. But at the end of the day, I think you need some basic framework to think about what do you do today, what do you do in a year, what do you do in 3 years, and how do you track it? And to me, it comes down to 3 basic questions. What can't you do that AI can? Make sure that you understand that edge. The second thing is, what shouldn't you do that you are wasting your time doing today? Same thing for your people. But those are both really sexy answers, right? We get to imagine saving money or inventing new cool Star Trek technology. But I think the most important question is, what won't you do? What don't your people do? Because there isn't enough value in it today, because they cost too much, or just humans suck at it. Those are the real opportunities, right? All that vampire sucking that happens in our lives, all the things we ignore. That's where life really changes. So ask yourself those 3 questions. And ask yourself, with the educated youth unemployment in this country, with the educated youth in your organizations, how can you use all of this technology to give them agency, to give them control? That might not be the thing that you choose to do, but you should really be asking, what are the other options? What is that other future that you want? Because there's so much potential in this country. You have beautiful land. You have amazing natural resources. You have energy. And you have educated people that you can superpower to create what happens next. As leaders in this country, the future is your choice. So how will you choose to compete? I'm Jonathan Brill. Thank you very much.